Hello and welcome everybody to Life and Leadership Podcast with David Gadberry. I'm David Gadberry and I'm so glad you're joining our leadership community. Hey, let me just ask you to do me a favor. If Life and Leadership Podcast is helping you in any way, please do me a favor and subscribe so all of these podcasts can come directly to you, whether you're listening to us on iTunes or you're watching us on YouTube. We'd love for you to be a part of our leadership community. And if it's doing well for you, share it with somebody. We'd love for you to be a part of that as well. So I want to encourage you today that what we're all about at Life and Leadership is that we don't look at leadership in the context of a vacuum, but we realize that life is messy, it has ups and downs, and so it's very definitely, leadership is very definitely something that has to be worked out on a daily basis, and it's worked out in real life. And so that's what we like to talk about. And so that's the approach that we take towards leadership. So today we're going to talk about the idea of being thankful for mentors who lead us and teach us to lead.
Thanks everybody for joining us today. My name's Connor Mason and I'm going to host the episode today. We're so glad that you're joining us, and we're here with David Gadberry. We're glad that you're here with us today. We're going to talk about being thankful for the leaders that are in our lives. And you obviously have been in leadership for quite a while, and you've got leaders in your life. I know you've told me a lot about the leaders in your life and how much they mean to you. Mm-hmm. And I'm excited to hear about those guys even more. It's always good, and I'm very thankful for when you share those experiences with us, because it's great learning experiences and how we should be thankful and view leadership in the right aspect. I know authority a lot of times today is looked at in a negative light. But when leadership is done right, it does nothing but benefit. Mm-hmm. And I'm excited to hear about some of those leaders today. And so when we kick off this episode, I just want to ask you, who are some leaders in your life that have been impactful and benefited you in a great way?
We've talked about this before, Connor, in the sense that there are leaders all around you all the time. And, I think you have different kind of mentors in our lives. We have mentors that are close to us and connected to us, and then we have mentors that we listen to their podcast or we read their books or we go to their conferences.
Sure.
And they may more be of what you would call a celebrity status or at least a popular status.
Yeah.
And those are great mentors to have. Don't misunderstand me. I don't belittle any of that because, we're doing a podcast right now that I hope is beneficial to people.
Yeah.
But we would be remiss if we didn't really look at the leaders who have directly affected our life, directly connected with us and rubbed shoulders with us and, knocked the rough edges off of us at times.
Yes.
Sometimes there are people that we really love and appreciate, and sometimes there are people that we have a hard time dealing with because of their approach to us and what really I believe God put them in our life for.
Right.
And so I've got several of those guys, and most of the guys I would talk to you about today, some of them you might know or have heard of, but most of them no one would even know. Mm-hmm. And so on all kinds of different levels. So there was a man in our denomination that was at the very highest, the denomination I grew up in. Mm-hmm. I was a young pastor, and I just started in youth ministry, and he had the very highest levels of leadership in our denomination. And he saw me at a conference one time, and he went out of his way to connect with me, asked me if he could take me to dinner, and took me and my wife. He and his wife took me and my wife out for dinner after a service one night, and he just started talking leadership to me. It's the first time I'd ever heard about leadership. So that was him. His name's Ron Carpenter. A lot of people may know his son, Ron Carpenter Jr., who's got a great ministry, was out on the East Coast, and now he's out on the West Coast. And his dad really made a huge, huge impact on me. It was literally...
He was one of the first ones that kind of spotted something in you.
Yes.
Like saw something.
Yes. He just... And I don't even know how I saw it. I think I did some ministry alongside him at that conference, and I was very, very young but he spotted something in me and he spoke to it. So we can talk more about that later, but he was one. My first pastor, that was my job, my first ministry job pastor. He He was a natural born leader. He was just a fun guy, and he taught me more. I'm not kidding. That was probably 30 years ago. And I'm telling you, something will come up, and I'll refer back to things I learned from him.
Wow.
He had that much impact. Matter of fact, I was just in a meeting with several pastors having coffee, and we were talking about something, and he came up.
Wow.
It was that he has such impact on my life. Then there have been several other pastors that I've worked with or worked for. Of course, my dad. My dad is a pastor and just a wonderful person, and he's had a major impact. He probably wouldn't even believe the impact he's had on my life, but there's so many things that I've picked up from him. And then my pastor, who I consider to be my pastor even today, is Kirk Pancratz with Church of the Harvest in Youth America. And he had a major impact on my life. And then I've got guys in my life today on our elder team and our staff team, and pastors that I do life with that are too many to name, really, but that I really learn from, really glean from. And so those are some of the people I'm thankful for.
Yeah, man. Sometimes I think we just don't even realize how impactful and how important leadership is. And a lot of times you don't realize how impactful it is until they're gone or until that presence is gone. And it's just indispensable. Good leadership is indispensable. I just wanted to ask you a few questions about some of these leaders you've had in your life and what they mean to you. We talk about something on our staff about like how some things are caught, not taught. And you can teach somebody something, but when you start getting in the trenches of the thing you're talking about and start doing it, and people are watching you who are maybe following you or learning from you, it's a whole lot easier in my mind in how I learned to catch something than to be taught something. And so with some of these leaders, what is something that you've caught from them, or maybe a few of them, that you still carry today that you can say, hey, because of them and what I caught from them, this is why I do what I do today?
This is the good thing about good leaders. I can do that with every single one of them.
Yeah.
The person who taught me that concept was Kirk Pancratz. He's a great leader, still one of my best friends.
He's amazing. And
he was my pastor for 15 years. And really, he was my pastor before that because we kind of had a really close relationship before I went on staff there. He was a mentor in my life during a season that ministry almost killed me. And I was young, and it almost got me before I was even able to take off, And he walked us through that. I mean, Janae and I will frequently talk about how he and Nancy they saved us.
You've told us about that.
And so he's taught me those things. But some of the things I caught from him were, he taught us a lot of things. He always taught leadership. He always communicated things that we needed to be doing as leaders.
Yeah.
But there were certain things that I caught from him more than he taught me. Yeah. Matter of fact, some of the things that he taught, or some of the things that I caught from him, he really never talked about. But he did. Yeah. And one of those things is persevere. I've never met anybody. The only way I could create an analogy for this would be like, get in your mind the image of a big, huge bull standing on a railroad track and facing off with a full blast train coming at it. This is the kind of persistence and perseverance this man has. Like, if he gets his mind around something, he locks in, and I guarantee you that bull will knock that train off the tracks. I'm not joking. And I caught that from him. Like, if we get our mind around something, and I'm sure you know this because of working for us, we will. Yeah. It doesn't matter how big the mountain is. No. It doesn't matter. That's another thing I caught from him is vision. Just just seeing things bigger. Don't be small-minded. Don't allow smallness to creep into your heart and keep you from expanding and growing.
So
Willis
good.
Baldridge, he was my first pastor. I caught from him a pastor's heart. I was telling those guys today that we were talking about. Somehow we got on the conversation of doing funerals. And he was, he grew up in the community, he had a church, he had a great church. It was a denominational church, but he far outgrew the bounds of the denomination. And church was big, and he had a, big building that he built. And it was just, he was just a dreamer, but he had a pastor's heart. So if you died in that community, even if you had another pastor, he might end up doing your funeral. I mean, that's just how it was.
He just loved people, man.
Oh, man, loved them and cared about them. And I caught from him that responsibility to care. Like, he didn't see it as just, something you did. It was something you were responsible to do. It was different, And he had it at a level that was, he truly cared about people.
He's authentic.
Oh, he cared about people. Yeah. And he could make people feel so good. Like, go into a family that's distraught because of a loss of a loved one, and he could just by coming in, and he taught me, just by watching that, something I caught as an understanding of the power of the pastoral presence. I don't think sometimes pastors realize how much the people who are in their church, how much they mean to them. And, people aren't as vocal as you would think, telling pastors how much they appreciate them. But I can guarantee you can tell as a pastor when you walk in the room, it changes the dynamic of the room. If there's something really hard happening and the pastor shows up, it has a major impact. And he taught me that. And not by telling me, but by showing me. So every time there was a funeral that he was going to do, he'd go see the family before, and he would take me with him. Yeah. So I watched everything he did and everything he said. So I really learned that pastoral care, not just from a book or from a class, but I learned it from a man, just watching him, so modeling. My dad, of course, I caught from him a deep sense of responsibility. My dad always has believed, even to his own detriment, even to his own, like if it would turn out negative for him, he would still take responsibility. Yeah. When other people wouldn't or whatever, that's just how he's made, and I caught that from him. I have no problem saying I'm sorry. I have no problem owning my failure. Because my dad always taught me, just by his presence, you take responsibility for your actions.
There's a power in that, in being able to do that. Yeah. And that's something that you've modeled really well. It's the team wins the victories, the leader really takes the blame. Yeah. And you exemplify that. I mean, that's something that we're catching from you as a staff, and I think even as a church. I mean, on any project we do as a church, if there's anything, I mean, sometimes even before I can take the blame for things we do, somebody is already taking the blame, and I have to take the blame from them. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And it's just good to be that way.
Great leaders give credit, take responsibility.
That's right.
They give credit, they take responsibility. That's what great leaders do. Yeah. Because ultimately, the leader is responsible.
That's right.
That's right. Regardless of who did it. You can figure that out later. And really, blame shifting doesn't help anything. Yeah. And it brings no solutions. But as a leader, hey, we're sorry. Didn't mean for that to happen. Right. Won't happen again. Yeah.
So good.
So I learned that from him. I had another pastor who was a good friend of mine, Terry Trammell. I worked for him for about a year as a kind of a music minister and a youth pastor. And he taught me some things. I caught some things from him, and that was to be a severe studier, to be a good, to take the art of preaching and teaching seriously and own it and not treat it flippantly, but do it well and be proud to do it well. Not be afraid of saying, hey, I enjoy this. This is something I'm good at and something I can develop and grow in. So I caught that from him.
Yeah, that's good. I think just talking about this subject, one thing that I've caught from you and just being a part of this church is when you're leading something, you have to have the energy to get the rocket off the ground.
Yeah.
Like say we're going into like in our context, we're going into a big worship experience. And say we have a early rehearsal. It's early. It's maybe 8 o'clock. We've asked the team to come at 7:30, and church doesn't start until 3 hours. But we have to work something out.
Yeah.
If you don't come with energy as the leader, nobody else is coming with that energy. So you have to be the spark that gets the thing going.
Right.
And energy is just so important. Being enthusiastic about what it is you're doing, it's just so important. And that one thing right there, you'd be surprised on how it energizes your team, even though they may not want to be there. They love doing what they do, but man, it's early. Still wiping the sleep out of my eyes. All of those things. Just having energy is so important.
It is. I heard Jeannie Mayo say one time, what leaders will do in moderation, the people who follow them will do in excess.
So good.
So I think that works positively too. I believe if you come with energy, your people will do it that much more.
Absolutely.
You create a culture of leadership that the leadership gets all in, even to the lowest levels of your organization. That's where most problems exist. That's where they start. Well, if you can teach people or you lead people in that way, they will deal with things that will never make it to you.
Right.
And so we have to model and really be in it.
Absolutely.
Leaders, I said something on the last podcast, and I really believe this. I really believe it, that we need to not treat people who are leading alongside us as if they're serving us,
right?
But that we together are serving the vision. I see way too many pastors that they really view it that way. I'm the pastor. God's put me in this role, and these people are here to serve me, get this vision done. That's really not true.
We lead leaders.
That's right. Jesus came and took a servant's posture. Now, he also led.
Right.
And his disciples did what he told them to do. That's the whole, rabbi Talmudim relationship. But the truth is, you have to have a servant's posture, and you have to do this together. You can't treat people like they're your personal servants. You got to model leadership for them,
right?
And whatever expectations you have for them, they have to see it in you.
So good, man. I've got 3 questions here that I want to ask you, and I don't know which one to shoot first. I'm really excited to hear that.
Go for it.
I'm excited. So now this is something that we as a staff, we lead teams, and this is something that I'm trying to teach people who want to learn. Like when we hear, hey, I want to learn this from you. Well, really, how I know you really want to learn is if you're pulling stuff out of me, and I don't always have to be, nagging on you. I feel like I pull on you a lot, and I try to. And I wanted to ask you the question, what's the best way to pull the most out of your leader?
Okay. I think, Pastor Kirk, I'm so thankful for him. He taught me so many things, and he put me in so many settings where I could learn.
Yeah.
He took me to Hillsong one time, and I learned, I heard a message on this that it's, the Bible says that wisdom is a deep well, and a wise man draws it out. And so that's our responsibility if we have a leader in our life, that our job, as a leader, I'm thinking vision. I'm thinking, where are we going? What are we doing? And the problem is, so much of the time, I'm not going to sit and think, all right, now how do I need to say? What do I need to make sure that Connor knows? What do I need to make sure that Michael knows? What does Danny need to know? What does Sydney need to know? What does Amanda need to know? I can't do that, because I just can't keep that all on the frontal lobes of my mind.
Sure. So
the relationship is more reaching for what you need to learn. And I when I first started at Church of the Harvest, I called Pastor Kirk all the time.
Yeah.
I called him all the time, and I emailed him all the time.
Yeah.
And he used that in a teaching one time. He said, when David first came, he really every day, all the time he's calling. And he said, you know what? It didn't bother me at all. And he said, the reason is because now, years later, if something's going on in the church and I need it handled, I know David is going to do it with wisdom and in a way that I would do it.
Yeah.
Because he drew it out of me.
Right.
He is, we're of one mind in the sense of that. And so I think the way you do that is to, number one, not be afraid.
See, and I think a lot of people get stuck right there. Well, if I ask them these questions, they're going to think I don't know. They're going to think
You don't know.
Exactly, and that's why you ask.
Yes, exactly. And I think the problem is, Connor, I'm serious, so many people let their pride keep them from growing. And you just need to, every time you do that, and by the way, we all do
Right.
that.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So every time we do that, we really need to think how ridiculous that is.
So ridiculous.
I am literally, when I get proud like that, I'm literally keeping myself from growing. I'm keeping myself from promotion. I'm keeping myself from opportunity. I'm keeping myself from larger things, more expanded things, growth in business, growth in ministry, growth in life, because I don't want somebody to think I don't know. You don't know.
Right.
So how are you going to find out if your whole goal is to keep people from knowing you don't know? You're not. So the first thing is, don't be afraid to let people know that you don't know. And then secondly, get really excellent at asking questions.
Yeah.
Now, I agree there are no stupid questions, because you don't want people thinking that or being afraid to ask questions. So
Right.
I'm never going to treat you like you're stupid if you ask me a question, even if your question isn't very good, right? Because I always want you to ask questions, right? But if you really want to draw wisdom out of a leader, you need to learn how to ask really good questions.
Right.
Open-ended questions that give you the answers that you really want, that you're trying to learn, not just trying to have a conversation, right? So I think learning how to ask really good questions and not being afraid to ask questions to begin with. And then I think be willing to learn even when what you hear is not what you wanted to hear. I know a lot of people that will they'll go to get something from a leader, and then that leader doesn't tell them what they want to hear, and they become offended and irritated, and I don't agree with that, and blah blah blah. And well, you just lost a good use of a leader, because a leader in your life is not going to lie to you.
Right.
A leader in your life is probably not going to patty cake around with you. They don't have time to do that.
Right.
And if you want to know something from them, then you better be prepared to hear the truth.
Yeah.
So, I've had guys before come to me, tell me what you think, really. I want you to be honest. Tell me what you think. And listen, I almost invariably will always say, really?
Do you know me?
Yeah.
Do you know me?
No, because I'm never harsh.
Right.
And I'm never mean. But if you ask me to tell you what I really think about something, if I think there's an area that needs to improve, I'm going to flat out tell you. And I don't have any problem doing that. You ask me.
Exactly.
Now, if you turn around and get offended,
right,
because I told you the truth, because in your heart you really felt a different way, and what you were really asking me to do is to compliment you.
Put your stamp on it.
That's right.
Yeah.
And if I really do feel like you knocked it out of the park, I'm going to tell you.
Right.
But then I'll probably also say, hey, here's something you might want to think about.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Do you know why? Not because I'm some kind of superior person. No, because I'm a learner.
Yeah.
And because I believe in continual improvement. And people have done that to me my whole life because I've asked them to.
Right.
And and then the last thing is, if you really want to draw wisdom out of a leader, stop expecting them to draw the wisdom out themselves and bring it to you.
Yeah.
You go after it.
Right.
And if you overdo it, they'll tell you.
Yeah.
Any leader I know that's worth their salt have no problem to say, hey, you need to back off a little bit. Every leader that's worth their salt will do that. They're not rude to you. They're not hateful, but they'll draw a line for you.
Yeah.
So you should never feel like, oh, I can't approach, or oh, I'm not going to ask that question, or oh, I'm not going to be, because most leaders I know want to help people. They want to help leaders become better leaders.
This is what I have said to some of the people we're raising up in our church is, hey, here's the deal. I want you to almost annoy me and make me hold you back. I said, what do you think I do with Pastor David? Mm-hmm. If I cross a line, he'll tell me. Mm-hmm. But until he says it, I'm going to ask questions. I'm going to, blow his phone up as much as possible, respectfully, all of those things. So almost annoy me. And it's crazy. Even sometimes when you say that, they still don't. People still won't draw it out. But some people will, and that kind of separates the real learners from the people who really don't want to learn.
And you know what else I think too? I think if you really want wisdom, you know what gets me stoked? I mean, fired up. Mm-hmm. What makes me want to spend time with people is when people draw wisdom out, and then I see them use that.
Yes.
And they grow, and they do something, or they got the courage up, and they took that discussion that we had and they turned it into something.
Sure.
I want to spend. I want to. Okay. And every leader I know is like that. Why? Because you're attracted to people who take some value that you've given them and use it
and apply it.
Right. There's nothing more draining, however, than someone who continually comes for wisdom but never uses it. And at some point, most leaders will just go, hey, I don't really think there's anything else I can do to help you.
Yeah.
Because, it's kind of like us and God. I think sometimes we're wanting, God, tell me, God, give me a revelation. God. I heard Paul Scanlon say something one time. People used to always ask him, what's God saying to you about your church? What's God saying to you about your church? He said, God's not saying anything to me about my church. They're like, what? What do you mean God's not saying anything to you about your church? He said, well, I haven't completed the last thing God told me yet.
Yeah.
And so once I get that done, maybe he'll tell me what's next.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times that's how God does. God's waiting for us to go back to the last thing we didn't do.
Yeah.
And do it. And then he'll give us more information.
Right.
And I think that's the way leadership works a lot. It's not like this weird, relationship where you're purposefully trying to mess with someone's life, but it's just like, I'm a leader, I'm trying to move things. And one of the greatest things that to me is when someone reaches their potential, when someone reaches for the potential that's on the inside of them, and they reach it. That's how I know what drives me. Like, I believe my calling in life is to help people see their potential and then help them develop it till they reach it. That's my goal. That's why I do coaching. That's why I pastor people.
True coach. I mean,
because here's the deal. This is honest truth. Here's the thing. I can go to different places. I can go to movies, and I can watch movies that are very emotional and not be emotional at all. But if I watch a movie where some underdog sees their potential and I don't care if it's like an action film. Yeah. But before that movie's over, tears are rolling up in my eyes because there's something about when someone grabs for that. Yeah. And I think that's how leaders are. I think when you're able to deposit into someone's life, and then that somehow adds enough value where it makes a difference, and they use that. Wow, man, I want more of that. And so, if you really want leaders to help you, then take what they give you and make something out of it. Yeah, and they're going to want to help you more.
That's good. You kind of touched on this a little bit in that little segment there, but what's the best way to respond to critique from your leader? What's the best way to respond? Because we're talking about being thankful for leadership, and you kind of touched on it. We always want the stamp of, man, you're killing it, but not, hey, here's some areas that if you don't straighten up, it could lead
I'm gonna say a couple of things first. I think that in leadership, we've learned from John Maxwell how positional leadership is not the highest form of leadership, and I think that leaders for far too long have stood on that that foundation of I'm the authority. And so a lot of leaders don't handle criticizing people well. They do it inappropriately. They do it in an ugly way.
Right.
They do it in a way that is demeaning and makes them feel superior and you inferior. So first I would say to leaders, man, learn how to critique the people who work with you in a way that's going to actually add value to them. That they can walk out and they can go, hey, I can take that and learn. That's another really good thing that Kirk Pancratz could do is he would, he could give you a good old-fashioned whooping. But when you left, you feel like, man, that guy loves me.
Yeah.
And he did.
Yeah.
And that's the reason, because he did.
Because he did, yeah.
Right. And he's a very lenient guy and very long-suffering. But I've told him this before, but too long-suffering sometimes, I thought. But I love that about him. And I think getting really good as a leader in doing that is very good. Now, so if I have a leader that's correcting me right or correcting me wrong, criticizing me right or criticizing me wrong, how do I respond? Well, it's great if you get a leader who's mature enough that they know how to critique you in a way that's beneficial to you. And it's unfortunate if you have a leader that doesn't critique you right.
Yeah.
But if you can get the emotion out of it and actually take the critique, even though you don't like the way it came, it's still going to benefit you. And that's the way you need to look at it, because you can either get mad about it or you can say, well, I may have had to take a chewing and they may not have handled that right, but I'm going to get something out of this. And what I'm going to get is I'm going to learn whatever it is I need to learn. So I think the first thing is, and this is an overarching attitude, so it may not be as practical as you want, but the first thing is be teachable. There's just far too many people in our world today, and I'm not talking about young people, I'm talking about anybody, just not teachable. Like too many know-it-alls, too many people who they don't want anybody telling them what to do. They don't want anybody to be authority in their life. So when they are critiqued, they don't receive it because they're not teachable. Well, the Bible in Proverbs, and we come from a place of faith. So if you're a business person and you're really not come from a place of faith, it's okay. These principles still apply. But the Bible actually says, I can't remember the text right now, but it says, he who will not receive correction is stupid. I mean, the Bible literally words it like that.
Lays it out plain for you, doesn't it?
Yes. And the truth is there's a big difference, Connor, between ignorance and stupidity.
Absolutely.
Ignorance is, I just don't know.
Right.
But stupidity is willful ignorance.
Yep.
In other words, I'm purposefully being ignorant.
Yep.
And I don't want you to teach me. I already know, or my pride won't allow me to be a learner. And so I think the first thing is have a teachable spirit. And then secondly, learn how to take criticism. Like there is a strategy on how to take it. And the first thing in that strategy is ask the question, is it true?
Yeah.
However it's presented, is it true?
Right.
Is there any modicum of truth in it?
Yeah.
Because if there is, I need to fix that.
Yeah.
I don't care if it came the wrong way. I don't care if it came from a messenger I didn't want to hear it from.
Yeah.
I don't care if it came with an attitude. Is it true?
Right.
Because if I can learn from that, then it makes me better.
Yeah.
Right? So I think that's the first thing is ask the question, is it true? I think the second thing, after being teachable, then asking the question, is it true? The second thing is truly learn how to evaluate that criticism in a way that you can break it down and implement the correction. So and I always encourage people, do it immediately. Don't wait. Don't overanalyze it. Don't get mad about it. Don't wrestle with it.
Right.
Just ask yourself, okay, is this true? What can I do about it? What are some ways that I can immediately implement this in my life to make a change? Just be willing to change. The best way to grow as a result of being critiqued, there's a difference between a spirit of criticism and being critiqued. But remember, we don't care. If we're receiving the criticism, it doesn't matter.
You have to be unoffendable.
I can learn it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can learn from it.
Yeah.
You know, I've got people that hate me. Mm-hmm. And there have been times, I hate to say that, but it's true. And every leader does. But there have been times that people who really wanted evil for me, they really wanted bad things for me, have said things, and instead of going, well, I'll tell you what, instead of doing that, in my own private time, I've asked, is that true?
Yeah.
Is that true about me? Now, I know they're mad at me, and I know they don't like me, and they don't like what I did or whatever, but is what they're saying true?
Right.
Because if it is, I need to change that. You know? And I think if we have that attitude, you know what that's called? Self-awareness.
Absolutely.
And truly, a lot of times we don't know what we don't know. Okay? So the only way to find out what you don't know is someone else brings it to your attention.
Right.
It's called having a blind spot.
That's right.
And every single one of us have a blind spot in some area.
Yes, absolutely.
And until someone opens our eyes to it by asking us a specific question or giving us a critique or whatever, then we can't change it and we can't fix it. And if we are closed-minded to criticism, then we're just asking to continue in a circle of failing in that area.
There's a movie that came out a while back, but it said in there, if you can take it, you can make it.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of guys and girls who want to be leaders, a lot of times just can't take it. And not just, withstand the experience of a critique, but evaluate it. Like John Maxwell says, doesn't matter how old you are, evaluated experience is where growth comes from, not just experience.
Right.
And so...
Yeah, because you can experience the same year over and over again.
Yeah.
But it's evaluated experience. How did I do this year? What am I going to do next year? How can I get better at this?
Absolutely.
Every year, almost every year, at the end of the year, I've got certain people in my life that I will text several questions about me to. Mm-hmm. How do you feel I'm doing in this, and this? And they're specific people. And I ask them because I have confidence they're going to tell me the truth.
Right.
And they have to be close enough to be able to see what's going on in my life.
Sure.
At the same time, now I don't just let everybody do that, because there are a lot of people in your life as a leader that would love the opportunity to just tell you what they think. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about confidence in your life, mentors, people who you know are going to help you grow.
Right.
See, if your attitude is that, I'm pursuing that.
Yes.
I'm pursuing getting better. I'm pursuing being critiqued. Mm-hmm. Then when you are, it won't bother you. You just learn from it. Mm-hmm. And then I want to say this. Gerald Brooks said one time that our leadership level is in direct proportion to our ability to experience pain. Mm. And if you want to be a big-time leader, you just have to have a big capacity for experience pain.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's just the bottom line. And part of that is critique. Now, I heard another man say the other day, and I don't know who said this, but I just saw it as a quote.
Sure.
And it said, don't worry about criticism from people that you wouldn't take advice from. Mm-hmm. And I think there's some wisdom in that too.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of people that will criticize you. And there's some criticism that you have no business listening to.
Yeah.
Because it's of no value to you.
I heard Jensen Franklin say something, eat the meat, spit out the bones.
Right, exactly.
Eat the meat, spit out the bones.
Is there anything true? Some of it can be true, and then the rest of it's just a bunch of garbage. Yeah. But you could learn from that little bit of truth.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of arrogant to write those experiences off as if they're meaningless. Like that didn't mean anything. Yeah. That don't mean nothing coming from them.
Yeah.
I just think it's dumb.
Yeah. It is dumb. It's unintelligent to do that. Now, at the same time, when somebody's just wanting to be mean,
sure,
and there's no value in what they're saying, you don't have to get all upset. It's like something that Coach Blake said when we interviewed him not long ago. Mm-hmm. He said, I just don't give certain people permission to speak into my life.
Right. Yes.
I thought that was such a great way to put it.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, there are some people that I would listen to.
Yeah.
But I've got too much going to sit around and listen to people that are just griping and criticizing me because I'm not following their agenda.
Right.
And so I think there is a place that we can be where we can just make a decision. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, you can say whatever you want, but I'm not listening to it.
Right.
I'm not hearing it.
Yeah.
I'm not too good not to hear it, but I just know there's no value in it. I know there's no truth in it.
Yeah.
So I'm not listening to it.
Exactly. Man, I feel like there's a lot to learn already in this segment. So a question that we've received, outside somebody asked this: how do I become easy to lead? How do I become easy to lead?
Well, I think we've talked about this already a little bit.
Yeah.
I think the obviously being teachable, obviously searching for improvement and wisdom. I think those are the ways to become easy to lead. But the number one way to become easy to lead is to be a person who has your own mind, uses your own gifts, adds value to the team, but doesn't come with your own agenda. Mm. One of the hardest types of people to lead are people who come to your organization not just to bring their gifts and their talents and their abilities and even their thinking, but they have a specific thing and they get into your organization and want to change it to fit them. Well, that's hard to lead because that's not going to happen. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? We know in every organization, like a certain business,
sure,
church, ministry, NGO, nonprofit, whatever, all of these, what your vision is, where you're going, or at least most do. And if you've got somebody who could really be beneficial to the moving of that forward, they think well, you don't have to think for them, they have their own thoughts, they can bring things to the table, be a contributor. No one wants blind followers.
Oh,
no. No one wants somebody just to come and be drug along. I'd a whole lot rather be pulling people back and saying, hey, we just don't do it that way, than I would be going, are you going to do something?
Yep.
I mean, you want those kind of initiative-driven people. You want those kind of people. So my thinking on it is to be easy to lead is just don't bring that agenda. If you really want something changed so bad, like you want the organization to be what you want it to be instead of what the vision for it is, then you either need to go start your own organization with that vision that you have, or you need to go find an organization to connect yourself to that does have that agenda.
Yeah.
Because if not, and you don't have to be enemies to do that.
No.
You just have to be very honest.
Right.
And very, kind and say, hey, you know what? I really just don't think this is the direction I'm going.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I think that's one of the things that keeps people from being easy to lead, that they don't just bring their thinking and their talents and their abilities and their efforts, they bring their agenda. And when you do that, you're not just making it hard for someone to lead you, you're making it hard for you to follow.
Wow. I just had a question pop into my head. With some of the leaders that we've talked about in your life, outside of the place you worked with those people, what's the biggest thing you learned outside of the work environment?
From them?
Like detached from ministry, what's the biggest thing? When everything was over, what are some of the things, like maybe about their at-home life or with their families, or what's the biggest thing you learned from them in that aspect?
From Willis Baldridge, to have fun. That brother knew how to have fun. He was just down to earth. He's passed on. And let me tell you something too. I regret. I wish I had stayed in touch with him. I was with him for about 3 years. Now listen to that. I worked for him for 3 years. And the denomination put me as a pastor of a church. Was way too young, but anyway, that's another story. But I left him after about 3.5 years and went and pastored my own church. He had me for 3 years, and I'm still talking about things I learned from him. 30 years later. So for leaders who think they're not having an impact, rethink that. From him, I learned how to have fun. He could. You were never around him for very long that you weren't dying laughing. He taught me how to have fun in church. Now, that is not away from ministry, but in ministry.
Yes.
It was the first church I ever went to where people really laughed in church.
Yes.
He was so lighthearted.
You told me about some of those experiences.
Yeah, and then he would be, he loved to fish. He loved to travel. He loved to be around people. He loved his wife. And so outside of ministry, number one, he allowed me to see him outside of ministry.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think that's a big mistake that a lot of ministry leaders make, is that they don't allow people who lead alongside them to see them outside that context.
Right.
It's a mistake. That's a mistake.
Man, it's such a mistake.
Yeah. And so that was something I learned from him. From Kirk, I learned to build relationships. Build relationships. And he had a lot of relationships. He was never intimidated to talk to anybody or any ever. So that's something I learned from him. From my dad, I grew up with my dad, and so I lived in his house. So things I learned from him is working hard.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid of hard work. Love your family. In his older years, he's taught me a lot, just in the sense of things that he felt like he didn't get right. He's talked to me about it and shared with me. So some of those things like that. I'd say that. I'm sure that if you're watching this podcast, you have leaders in your life, and you're probably grateful for them. And you, just like I did here with Connor and I sitting here and talking about this, you could probably think of all kinds of things that you've been taught by them and things that you've caught from them. But can I just ask you to do something? Over this Christmas holiday, I want you to do this, whether it's by text or sending a card or making a phone call. Tell them. If you're a leader, you understand this and you know this, that a lot of times when you're leading, you so long to know, am I making a difference? And you so long to know that someone appreciates the effort and the energy and the things that you're trying to teach and trying to develop. And it just gives you an indicator that, hey, I've made an impact. I've added value. And for a leader, there's nothing greater than that, to get that feedback that I have added value to someone. So I'm asking you to just think about the leaders in your life, people that you've learned from, people that you've caught things from, people that have modeled the way to live for you, the way to lead for you, and tell them. Gratitude is great, but it's largely ineffective unless it's shared. And so, you can feel gratitude for someone, but it does nothing for them unless you tell them. And so I can't think of a greater gift you could give to a leader in your life than to just tell them how much they mean to you, and specifically what they've added to your life. So thank you so much for being a part of Life and Leadership with David Gadberry here today. And remember, you can always subscribe so these podcasts can come directly to you, and share it with somebody. If it's adding value to you, possibly it'll add value to them. And we're just trying to build that audience so that we can add value to as many people as we possibly can. Thank you for being a part of our leadership community, and see you next week.